Great. We are now live on Facebook and on YouTube. We welcome one and all to another session of Daily Learning, Lockdown Inspiration. And I want to welcome all those who are commenting personally on our chat. If you're just logging on now, please do let us know you're with us. Good morning, Shirley Feldman, Lionel Rubin, Helen Feinstein and Brian, Anne Hack, Michael Stein, David Ginsburg, okay, Larry Cohen, Alan Leibovitz, Michael Stein, Boker Tov, Norman Stein, Hilton Sawisky. Good to have you back here. Robert Levy and Maureen, Mark Wachenheimer. Great, look at this. Busy morning this morning. Manfred Kalmer, Ruth Kaplan, Larry Cohen. Hi, Mike. Okay, if you're just logging on now, please let us know. We love to hear from you. Sherilyn Diamond, good morning. Okay. What a great morning. I hope you're all well. On YouTube, we've got some visitors here. Norman Stein. Hi, Larry. Okay, on YouTube, hi, Philip Gordon, Dennis Basarabi. Good morning. Thank you for letting us know you're here. Hilly Lipworth. Great. Good to see you all. Keep on the line. I hope you had a great Shabbos and are enjoying a beautiful Sunday morning. I personally went for a run this morning. It was fantastic. So I hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday morning. We're going to just wait another couple of minutes while people are logging on. So if you're just logging on now, please do let us know you're joining. Fega on YouTube, thank you for joining us. If you're joining us on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, we'd love to hear from you and to engage with you. So thank you for joining on a bright morning. We just finished the book of Vayikra. This past Shabbos was the book of Vayikra, which was great. And the Chazak V'nit Chazek. Good morning. Good morning. Arnold Orkin, thank you for joining. Okay, good to have you all here. We're going to get going here this morning. Thank you. I see some more people logging on. Shoshana Kaplan, Gerald and Shoshana Kaplan, thank you for joining. Daryl and Shelley Smith, thank you. Good morning. Great. So we have a great crowd here this morning. On Friday, we started to speak about the concept of lending to one another, borrowing money. And we spoke about what is wrong halachically, according to Torah values, what is wrong with lending money and why one can't benefit from money. Meaning you can benefit from renting out your car and someone pays you rent for that, or you can benefit from your holiday home, but money you can't benefit from. You can't lend money to somebody and earn money, earn interest from the lending of that money, unless there's a special contract that's signed, which is called the Heter Iska, which is a bit of a loophole according to halachic practices, which then makes the borrower and the lender like partners, and that allows them then to use the interest as earnings of the business deal. This contract was put into place because people stopped lending and borrowing money to each other because times were tough and they stopped lending and borrowing, so they put this contract in place. But the books and the Holy Sforim write that's not the ideal to rely on this contract, but rather a neighbor to a neighbor, a friend to a friend should be able to lend money and to help the other person during times of difficulty without any interest and without any special contracts. And we spoke on Friday how God is protecting the rights of the poor man, because the on the one hand, Torah advocates for capitalism, where each person should establish themselves and each person should grow their wealth. On the other hand, the risk of that is the wealthy becoming wealthier and the poorer becoming poorer. And so Torah puts in certain guidelines to help protect the dignity of the poor man, that he doesn't write off his life by taking on loans that he can't pay, especially that accumulate interest. There was a discussion on Friday. We welcome Arlene Udulovich, Shalom Trigger. Thank you, Linda and Chaim Drew. Jaime. Okay, so today I wanted to elaborate on that point. And there's a powerful Rav who shares beautiful insights, Rabbi Shner Ashkenazi, who's a young rabbi in Israel. And he shared this point that I want to share with you now, which I think has a powerful message. There's another spiritual message, spiritual lesson that God is teaching in the laws of interest. And maybe it's not the literal meaning behind the verse, it's not the literal meaning behind the prohibition, but there's something special and powerful in the more spiritual insight. And he brings this from the Hasidic Sforim, the Hasidic books. There's a message that God's sharing with us. The message is that we are in the world to work. We're in the world to work. And the more we work, the more we're able to earn and to live and to survive and to grow and to thrive and to have an effect on the entire world. Man was created to work. Man wasn't created to rest. We know the story about Yaakov Avinu. The Yaakov Avinu came down to Mitzrayim after Joseph was there, and eventually the brothers had to go down to Egypt, and one thing led to the next, and eventually Benjamin was taken away, and Benjamin was left in Mitzrayim. We know that Yaakov Avinu, our forefather Jacob, had to go down to Egypt with his children. And it says, Bikish Yaakov Leshev B'Shalva. Yaakov thought, finally he's going to get to Egypt, and in Egypt he's going to rest. I'm sorry, the story of Bikish Yaakov Leshev B'Shalva was actually in Israel. And Yaakov thought, finally, he's back in Israel. He has his family. And now it's going to be time to rest. And what takes place? The episode of Yosef and the brothers selling Joseph down to Egypt. And what do Chazal tell us? Chazal tell us that Yaakov Avinu made a mistake. He thought that he's going to have a time to rest. He thought that towards the more senior years of his life, he's going to have an opportunity to take a break. Because if you think about the life of Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov went through a very, very tough time. Yaakov Avinu went from Esav to Lavan to the angel of Esav, one challenge after the next. And finally, he gets back to Israel after spending years and years in the house of Lavan. He finally gets back to Israel with his family, and now he wants to relax. He wants to take it easy. And this is where the Torah tells us that Yaakov wanted to take it easy. And what happens? The episode of Yosef. And Chazal tell us that Yaakov made a mistake. He thought he's going to take it easy. No one is here to take it easy. Taking it easy happens in the world to come after 120. That's when taking it easy happens, not in this world. And as soon as Yaakov requested to take it easy, what happened? The brothers sell Yosef. And eventually that leads to the next journey. Yosef goes down to Egypt, and the brothers get hungry, and the brothers go down to Egypt, and Shimon is taken away, and Benjamin is taken away, and eventually the whole family goes down to Egypt. And so Yaakov was wrong in that request. And what that teaches us is that we are here in the world to work, not to relax. Yaakov wanted to relax. He thought he had accomplished everything he needed to accomplish. Says God, no, you don't relax. You haven't accomplished everything you need to accomplish. There's still things that you need to accomplish, whether it's going down to Egypt, whether it's speaking to Pharaoh, whatever the story may be. Menashe and Ephraim, there's plenty for Yaakov still to do. There's no time to relax. And here the Torah is teaching us like this. It's time to work. That's what we need to do. We need to work our lives. No one should think that we could relax and just use our money, the finances, to lend out money to people and make earnings of that money while I'll sit at home and relax, while I'll sit at home and take it easy. Here the Torah is telling us, and I said as I began, this is not the literal meaning behind the mitzvah, not the literal reason behind the mitzvah, but it's the hidden message behind the mitzvah or the prohibition of ribis, of interest. Don't think you can just sit back and let the money make you money and let your money deliver and earn you a living. That's not how a yid, that's not how a Jew looks at life. A Jew looks at life that I'm here to work. I'm here to work and to put my skills and my knowledge back into society, back into the community. And yes, from that, I can earn a living. From my skills, from my knowledge, yes, I can earn a living to be able to live, to be able to grow, to be able to survive, to be able to sustain myself and prepare for the future. But not to invest my money into a loan and think I'm going to make money off that loan and then sit back and relax. That's not the goal. Because God did not create us to be able to sit back and relax and retire, but rather to work hard and to continue to work hard. And for that, we deserve to earn an income. If there's any questions you'd like to pose for us this morning, please do so. We are now sitting on close to 40 students across the platforms of YouTube and Facebook. So I'd love to engage with you. If you're just coming on now, if you're logging on now, please let us know you're with us. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them down below in the chat. Rabbi Ashkenazi shared a story about his grandfather. His grandfather was Mr. Wolpe, a Yerushalmi Jew who lived in Yerushalayim. And the Yerushalmi, Mr. Wolpe, was actually a bank manager. And the way it works in Israel is that as you head towards retirement age, 65, that's it. They retire you, no questions asked. So Mr. Wolpe knew that by age 65, he'll be retiring. And eventually it happened. He turned 65, he retired from his bank managerial position. And he decided at that point that he was going to take a trip overseas. And he went overseas and he arrived to America. And he decided he wanted to go see and visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now, Mr. Wolpe was not a Chabad Chassid per se, but he had children. His children had become close to Chabad in Israel and Yerushalayim. And he said, if my kids are marveled by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I too want to go visit him. And now that I've got some time on my hands, I'm going to go see him. So he goes to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, what are you up to? What are you doing? And he explains that he just retired because he's reached 65. And the Rebbe looks at him and says, retired? How can you retire? You still got plenty of years ahead of you. Ad mea ve'esrim. Bis 120, you got still up to 120 to continue working. Who can afford to retire? How can you retire? And he tried to explain that, the legal law says at 65, you've got to step down. And the Rebbe wouldn't accept that. You still have skills. You still have ability. You still got knowledge to invest in the banking sphere of society. What do you mean retiring? Retiring? And that was a new perspective that he hadn't thought about, where the Rebbe was persistent, that there's no time to retire. Anyway, he parked that in the back of his head, and he continued on his travel, and then he headed back to Israel. And when he got back to Israel, as this happens to all of us, his letterbox was packed, ungepackt. His letterbox was full. because he had been away for a few weeks traveling. And he looks inside his letterbox, and one of the many letters that are there is a letter from another bank association within the religious community of Geula and Mea Sha'arim in the middle of Yerushalayim. And the letter says, "Dear Mr. Wolpe, we understand that you've now retired from your position at so-and-so bank. We would like to offer you a position in the bank to run a particular department in our bank. If you'd be willing to accept the position, it'd be a big honor for us. Please, will you contact us to discuss more details?" And he sees this letter and he thinks, so strange, had I not gone to the Rebbe and had I not had that conversation, I would have thrown this letter away. I've retired. I'm on a retirement package. I've set up myself chavrutot and learning schedules lined up for the day. It's time to retire, time to relax. But that conversation that he had with the Rebbe left an imprint in his mind, and he said, well, maybe it's not time for retirement now. Maybe I'm too young to retire. And so he contacted this bank, this fund organization, and he signed up with them at the age of 65. And he worked with them for another 10 years. Healthy, strong, investing his knowledge and his experience back into the industry. And at age 75 is when he took a step back. And Rabbi Ashkenazi says about his grandfather that from then, things started going downwards because he was no longer busy anymore. He was no longer occupied anymore. And one thing led to the next. And eventually he fell ill, and later on he passed on. What we see from this story is how the Rebbe wouldn't let Mr. Wolpe sit back and relax. The Rebbe wouldn't let Mr. Wolpe relax and retire. There's no time to retire. Life is here to work. And it could be that your positions change. The job you had at 30 or the job you have at 40 or 50 or 70 are not the same. And obviously the positions will change. But the concept of investing your knowledge and your skills back into society, back into the community, back into the workforce, that is the message that the Rebbe was sharing with Mr. Wolpe and encouraged him to go back into the workforce, to get going again. When the Rebbe himself turned 70, he addressed this topic of retirement. And he said that people think that 70 is an appropriate age to retire. But we don't have time for that, he said. I don't have time, he said, to retire. There's so much to accomplish. There's so much to do. How can one retire? And as a result, on his 70th birthday, he launched a campaign. And he said, I want to show you what it means not to retire. I want to show you, I want to lead by example of what it means to do more when you're more experienced. Not to do less, to do more. And he launched a campaign. The campaign was to build 70 new institutions. So while he had led the organization for so long and had built many new Chabad houses and schools and projects, at his 70th birthday, he said, we're not relaxing, we're not resting, we're going to build 70 new organizations. And he launched a new campaign. And he pledged actually financial assistance. Not a lot, but monumental. He pledged financial support for these 70 organizations. Anybody that was going to notify him of a new organization, of a new establishment, would get a check to assist as seed money to assist them in building this new project. And that was his sign to the world. Don't think that I am going to step back at this point in my life, but rather I've got work to do. And he went on to work for another 22 years till age 92 when he passed on. So from age 70 to 92, there's a lot that the Rebbe pulled off and accomplished in those years. So here, the Torah is teaching us, don't think that you're going to live off your money. You're going to lend out your money to the members of the community. Your money is going to generate income through ribbit, through interest, as we read about on Shabbos. That's not the way a person earns a living. And the truth is that we do have investments. And we do have investments, and the investments do help us to live and to grow our wealth. That's not what the Torah is negating. What the Torah is saying is, through hinting through the prohibition of interest, is one shouldn't think that you can sit back and relax and let one's money earn you a living. But rather, we got work to do, and us ourselves have to invest that time and our skills and our energy into doing what we need to do, and that will generate income for us. On that note, I think this stretches to another topic, and that is the topic of the experience of the senior versus the innovation of the junior. We're living in a world today that these two extremes are such extremes. On the one hand, we have the chidush, the novelty, the innovation of the modern world, of the younger generation, of technology. And we're seeing this more and more, especially during this lockdown period, especially during the coronavirus, that whoever can tap into the industry of technology, of social media, of online platforms is going to succeed despite the lockdown, or because of the lockdown, they're going to succeed. So we got, on the one hand, we've got the chiddush and the novelty and the innovation of the younger generation. On the other hand, we have the yoshon, the experience of the older generation. Those who have put in years and years of hard work. Those who know the industries, who know the malacha, who have worked through tough times and better times. Right? That's the experience. And sometimes what's happening in the world of today, sometimes the innovation and the creativity is overpowering the experience. The innovation and creativity is fast moving, it's noisy, it's loud, it's relevant to today in a big way. And sometimes it's overpowering the experience and those who invested years and years of experience. And maybe it's time for us to take a step back and to reflect. They're both good. They're both important. Experience and innovation are both important. The question is, does one overpower the other? Is one mutually exclusive to the other? I see Robert and Maureen Levy's comment about Parshas Bechukotai, where you found the punishments to be very scary. Okay, thank you for raising that question. I'm going to come back to that question in just a few moments when we conclude this point of thought, and then we'll talk about that. Thank you very much for posing your question this morning. So that's the message, that when you've got experience, when you have knowledge, don't retire, don't rest it, don't let others take over, because your experience is invaluable. But rather find ways of investing that experience, nurturing that experience, and sharing that experience. And maybe publishing books, and maybe writing a blog, and maybe sharing Facebook videos like we're doing right now. There's ways of sharing that experience. Don't retire at the age of 65 or 70 and say, okay, I've done enough now for the industry. Let other people get involved, because you have what to contribute. You've got what to invest until Me'ah V'Esrim. And may not be in the same role as you were in earlier. That's possible. But there's other roles you can fill. And there's mentoring and writing and speaking and lecturing. There's so much you can do with your knowledge today. Don't give up. Don't hang the boots up. Don't retire. Rather, invest that knowledge back into society. Right, let's touch upon Maureen and Robert Levy's comments. I want to invite other people to share their comments on the chat this morning so that we can engage with you too. So we're sitting here with a beautiful crowd on Facebook and YouTube. So I'd love you to share your comments and let's engage for a couple of minutes here to discuss some of these questions. So Maureen and Robert Levy asked the question about punishments. The punishments of the parasha this week, Parashat Bechukotai, were very, very scary. So I want to address that. I tell a story about Rabbi Shneur Zalman of the Yadi. He used to be the Baal Koreh, who used to read on a weekly basis. He used to read the parasha of Parashat Bechukotai. And his son, one year, Rabbi Shneur Zalman had to travel from town. And so he wasn't around anymore. So they had to call a Baal Koreh, someone else in who could read the parasha for them. And that year, Rabbi Shneur Zalman's son, young Dov Ber, actually got sick. He got sick. And they asked him, what happened? Why did he get sick? And he said, because my father wasn't, because I heard the tochacha, the rebuke, and it sounded so scary. That's Maureen and Robert Levy's point. That sounded so scary. I see Shalom Trigo writes as well. The curses sounded so scary, so I got ill. So they said to him, but this is not the first year. This is not the first year you've heard the laning of the tochacha, of the rebuke. You hear the laning of the tochacha every year, not just this year. He says, no, listen, please understand. Every year, my father lanes the laning. Every year, my father lanes the laning of the tochacha. And it sounds like blessings. The curses sound like blessings. This year, my father wasn't here, so someone else had to stand in for him. And boy, oh boy, did I hear those curses. And as a result, I got sick. Good morning, Stan Rosenberg. Thank you for joining us. So this story illustrates that really the curses of the laning, the punishment of the laning that we read about on this past Shabbos, Robert, Maureen, they're not really curses. They sound like curses, but they're not really curses. Really behind the curses are brachas, are blessings. Just sometimes we hear the curses and sometimes we hear the blessings. Excuse me. What we need to do more, excuse me again. What we need to do more of is to see the blessing, the silver lining behind the curse. We're living in a time right now that's full of curses. It's very, very difficult times right now. With lockdown, with economic pressure, things aren't comfortable for us. Things aren't good. It's almost like reading the tochacha. It's almost like reading the rebuke that's written in the parasha. And we got the choice. We can either read it like Rabbi Shneur Zalman of the Yadi, where you hear blessings through the laning, or we can read it like his locum, like the Baal Koreh who filled in for him, where you hear the curses loud and clear. And I think we should encourage each other to be that type of laner, that type of Baal Koreh, who's able to read through the curses but hear the blessings. Talk about lockdown, talk about economic pressure, talk about the challenges of coronavirus, yes, but see the blessings that are there. See the blessings. I'll give you a few examples. I was just on the phone with my mother the other night, and we were speaking about, the corona lockdown and what that brings. And I shared with her a few things that I found as a blessing during this time. For example, when I go for a run in the morning, these days I've been going for a run between 6 and 9, obviously. My son, who's 7 years old, who's normally in lockdown during the day, he rides his bike next to me. And we go for half an hour. I run, he rides. It's amazing. He is in ninth heaven, cloud 9. He is so excited. I can barely get that chance to do that during the year. Not even on Sundays, and let alone the rest of the year. And now, 3 times a week, we're riding and running together. He loves it. Or putting my kids to sleep. I don't get the opportunity every night to put my kids to sleep because I'm busy at shul or whatever else is going on, functions or whatever else. During this lockdown period, I pretty much have had the chance to put my kids to sleep every night with a book and all. So I'm not saying that that's ideal forever, and please God, it won't last forever, but I'm trying to find the silver lining and the blessings behind the curses. We're in a cursed time. Yes, it's very difficult. It's gray. It's dark. We've got to use the opportunity to find those brachas, to find those blessings that lie beneath the difficult time. That was a good question. Thank you, Maureen and Robert, for sharing that with us. Any other questions you'd like to pose, either on our initial topic of loans and interest and retirement, experience versus innovation, or on any other subject related to the parsha or related to Pirkei Avot? We read chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot as well. You may have any questions there. I'd love to hear from you and to comment and to engage with you. Feel free to post your questions and we'll share them and discuss them. Brian Owen, thank you. Brian's not able to comment on our Facebook or YouTube pages. So thank you, Brian. Let's just see your comments here. So, Brian, absolutely. Absolutely. Commitment to charity work. Is that considered work? Because to find a job at an older age is more difficult. Absolutely. So what this means is, when I said that one shouldn't retire or rest or relax, but rather find something to do, 100%. There's many things one can do. Charity work, volunteer work. The problem with charity work or volunteer work is you have to be able to afford to do charity work or volunteer work. But for sure, if someone's able to afford to give their time, to commit their time to charity, to volunteer, to assistance in the community, absolutely. For sure. My Zayda, in fact, my grandfather, and I've told this story before, he was in the clothing industry, what they call the Schmatte industry. After the war, he was a manufacturer of clothing. And eventually he couldn't compete anymore against the competition and the import from overseas. So he decided to retire, and he retired at a relatively early age. He was 60 when he retired. But he then went to invest his time in the community. So he took on teaching jobs voluntarily. He was able to, he could afford to. He went to teach on a voluntary level, and he requested to have the more stronger students in Gemara, and he taught them Gemara at an older age. He also began the first charity trust, charity fund in Melbourne, Australia. There's no such thing as a Chevra Kadisha there in Melbourne. So he began the first fund. And from that fund, he helped families in the community. So he had a business mind. He was able to structure the fund correctly, and he did that. So to answer Brian's question, absolutely, one can choose many different ways of giving back into the community and helping the society or charity or community. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so another question came through here. Thank you, Darren Shelley Smith. Could you comment, this is on YouTube, could you comment about the slave aspect? Could you comment about the slave aspect in yesterday's parsha and how it applies to us today? Yes, so the parsha does speak about slaves and avodim. We don't necessarily have slaves today like we had yesteryear in the old days of old. Thank you, Bernice. Better late than never. And maybe you can go back and watch the recording afterwards. We don't have slavery as we did in the past. But do you know how many laws of employment, employer-employee, come from the parsha discussing slaves? The Torah teaches us through the parsha of slaves of how to treat another person, how to treat a worker, how to treat an employee. And there's lots and lots of messages. There's lots and lots of messages that we learn from the slave in our lives of how to treat. You know, for example, the slave had to have the same pillow as you, the same bed as you, the same mug as you, the same coffee as you, the same food as you. So halakha says that although we don't have the laws of slaves today, we should learn how to respect our employees, respect our domestics, like we were taught how to respect the slaves in the Torah. I think this relates more to us than ever before, because in other countries around the world, they don't necessarily have domestics, for example, working in their house day to day. We do. And the same way we're supposed to treat the slave in the Torah with utmost respect and utmost of benefits that we can provide for them, so too we have the obligation to provide for our domestics and our workers, although they're not slaves. Shalom Trigo writes, the curses did all happen over the course of our history. Where do we experience the hidden blessings? Wow, that's a strong comment or question, shall I say. Shalom, thank you for that. So Shalom, the answer is look at us today. Look at us today. How many Jews are living in Israel today? How many Jews are living in the state of Israel today? How many Jews are there in the world today? As of there are 6 million, over 6 million Jews living in Israel today. With Jewish sovereignty, maybe not Torah sovereignty, but Jewish sovereignty. That's a massive, massive blessing. The way we survived the Holocaust, although the Holocaust was the butchering of our people, and we lost so many, the way we came out of that, stronger, with perseverance and focus to build our new country. Israel is stronger today than ever before. Israel has more Torah institutions than ever before. Israel has innovation in the modern world more than ever before. Why we had to go through the curses of history in order to get to where we are today, no one has the answer for that. Why couldn't we have 6 million living in Israel without the curses? We don't know the answer. Why couldn't we have an innovative country without the curses? We don't know the answer. But the fact that we're here today, and those nations like the Babylonians and the Romans and the Egyptians and the Nazis are not here today. The fact that we are here today is that hidden blessing. It's the silver lining has come as a result of galut, as a result of persecution, is where we're holding today. Sometimes we think it's in spite of that, in spite of the curses, we're here today. And maybe we need to rephrase that. Maybe through those curses and those difficult times, we have what we have today because we've come out stronger, more focused, ready to fight back and to conquer. I hope that answers your question, Shalom. Not to see what we have today in spite of the difficulties, but rather through those difficulties is where we got to today. I'm happy that Felicia, you're able to join us. I'm not sure why you are finding it difficult. But thank you one and all for logging on. If there's any other questions you'd like to share with us or comments or critique, feel free. Either here on the chat right now, or you're more than welcome to message me following the class. Thank you for joining. We'll be back here tomorrow morning, same place, same time, for our daily learning of Lockdown Inspiration. I wish you all a wonderful day. Keep safe and keep sane, and all the best.